Hello, silent humans. Before we dive into this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to Silent Human Greeting and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos and help our content reach more people who love compelling stories just like this one. The first rays of North Carolina sunlight filtered through the narrow windows of Building 18C at Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the armory floor. At 0530 hours, most soldiers were still wrestling with their alarm clocks, but Sergeant Elena Rodriguez had been awake for an hour already. Sleep had become a luxury she could rarely afford, even during what the Army called her recovery period. Elena moved through the armory with the quiet precision of someone who had spent years learning that survival often depended on making no unnecessary noise. Her combat boots barely whispered against the polished concrete as she made her way to the secure weapons storage area. To anyone watching through the security cameras, she looked like just another administrative clerk performing routine maintenance duties. But Elena Rodriguez was far from routine. She stopped before a locked steel cabinet marked with her service number and entered her personal access code. Inside, wrapped in a custom foam case, lay her most trusted companion, a .338 Lapua Magnum precision rifle that had been her partner through missions across 3 continents. The weapon was worth more than most soldiers made in 6 months, but its value to Elena transcended money. This rifle had kept her alive when everything else had failed. Elena lifted the weapon with the reverence some people reserve for religious artifacts. Her hands moved automatically through the disassembly process, each motion smooth and practiced after thousands of repetitions. The bolt came free with a satisfying click, followed by the trigger group, then the barrel. She laid each component on the padded work surface, creating a perfectly organized display of precision engineering. The morning ritual wasn't just about maintenance, it was therapy. Each part she cleaned was a memory processed, each adjustment a way of staying connected to the skills that defined her identity. The Army psychiatrist had recommended she find healthy coping mechanisms during her administrative assignment. They had no idea this morning routine was the only thing keeping her centered. As Elena began cleaning the bolt face with practiced strokes, she allowed her mind to drift to the last mission. The target had been 2,147 meters away, positioned on the 3rd floor of the abandoned building in a location that officially didn't exist. Wind speed had been 12 knots from the southeast, temperature 34 degrees Celsius. One shot, one kill. As always, mission success rate, 100%. The sound of approaching footsteps snapped Elena back to the present. Heavy, confident strides echoed through the corridor outside the armory. She glanced at her watch. 547 hours. Too early for most personnel, but perfect timing for someone conducting surprise inspections. Elena continued her work, not looking up as the footsteps stopped outside the armory door. She heard the electronic beep of an access card, followed by the hydraulic hiss of the security door opening. Through her peripheral vision, she saw a figure in crisp ACUs enter the room. "Morning, Sergeant," came a deep voice that carried the unmistakable authority of senior leadership. "Good morning, sir," Elena replied without looking up, her hands never pausing in their methodical cleaning of the rifle components. The footsteps approached, slowly, deliberately. Elena could feel the weight of scrutiny as the visitor took in the scene. A seemingly ordinary administrative clerk, performing what appeared to be personal weapon maintenance, with the kind of precision usually reserved for armorer specialists. "That's quite a rifle, Sergeant Rodriguez." Now Elena did look up, meeting the steady gaze of Brigadier General Marcus Collins, the base's commanding officer. Collins was a soldier's soldier, decorated combat veteran with over 25 years of service. His reputation for being fair but uncompromising was legendary throughout Fort Bragg. "Yes, sir," Elena replied simply, returning her attention to the rifle. "Personal equipment, sir. All properly registered and stored according to regulations." Collins stepped closer, his experienced eye taking in the custom modifications visible on the disassembled weapon. The stock was clearly aftermarket, designed for precision shooting at extreme ranges. The scope mounts were military grade, far beyond what any standard infantry soldier would need or could afford. "Mind if I ask what a clerk needs with a .338 Lapua Magnum?" Elena's hands stilled for just a moment. "Hobby shooting, sir. Long-range precision is relaxing." "Relaxing," Collins repeated the word as if testing its weight. "Most people find golf relaxing, Sergeant. This looks like it could reach out and touch someone at considerable distance." "Yes, sir. It's accurate to about 1/500 meters in the right hands." Collins raised an eyebrow. Elena had understated the rifle's capabilities by nearly half, but her casual mention of such distances suggested familiarity with precision shooting that went far beyond weekend hobby activities. "And are those the right hands, Sergeant?" Elena reassembled the bolt group with movements that were almost too fast to follow, each component sliding into place with mechanical precision. "I do all right, sir." The understatement hung in the air between them. Collins had been around elite soldiers long enough to recognize the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove to anyone. Elena Rodriguez wasn't bragging about her skills, she was actively downplaying them. "Carry on, Sergeant," Collins said finally. "Just make sure you're following all storage protocols for personal weapons." "Always, sir." As Collins turned to leave, he paused at the door. "Rodriguez?" "Yes, sir." "What's your current assignment?" "Administrative support, sir. Personnel records management in Building 7. Collins nodded and left without another word, but Elena could tell from the way he moved that her answer had only raised more questions. She continued her morning ritual, but part of her mind was already calculating how long it might take for those questions to lead somewhere she wasn't ready to go. Outside, General Collins walked slowly toward his staff car, his mind turning over the conversation. Personnel records management was typically where the Army placed soldiers who were either being disciplined or recovering from something. But Elena Rodriguez hadn't struck him as someone being punished. She carried herself with the quiet confidence of an elite operator, and that rifle. Collins had seen enough custom precision weapons in his career to know that Elena's equipment represented a significant investment, both financial and professional, the kind of investment made by someone whose life depended on hitting targets at distances that would challenge Olympic marksmen. By the time Collins reached his office, he had made a decision. He was going to find out exactly who Sergeant Elena Rodriguez really was, and why one of the Army's apparent administrative clerks was maintaining a rifle that belonged in the hands of a special operations sniper. What he would discover in her classified personnel file would change everything, not just for Elena, but for a mission that would soon require exactly her unique and deadly skills. General Collins settled behind his desk at 0630 hours, earlier than his usual schedule, but the encounter with Sergeant Rodriguez had left him with questions that wouldn't wait. His office on the 3rd floor of the command building overlooked the main parade ground where early morning PT formations were beginning to assemble in the dim light. Collins pulled up the personnel database on his secure terminal, entering his access codes for routine personnel inquiries. He typed, "Rodriguez, Elena M." into the search field and waited for the system to populate her basic service record. What appeared on his screen looked entirely ordinary. Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, 5 years of active duty, currently assigned to administrative duties in personnel records management. Born in El Paso, Texas, enlisted straight out of high school, completed basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, with above-average scores, but nothing exceptional. Standard progression through the enlisted ranks, no disciplinary actions, current security clearance level, secret, but something felt wrong. The timeline showed gaps, periods where her assignment locations were listed simply as TDY, temporary duty, without specific units or locations. For a personnel clerk, that was unusual. Most administrative soldiers had clear, traceable assignments to specific bases and units. Collins leaned back in his chair, considering. Elena's morning ritual with that expensive precision rifle suggested capabilities that went far beyond filing paperwork. Her casual familiarity with extreme-range shooting spoke to professional training that wouldn't appear in a standard service record. He reached for his secure phone and dialed the number for Colonel Sarah Martinez, his intelligence liaison. If there were classified aspects to Elena Rodriguez's service history, Martinez would have access. "Martinez, Sarah, it's Marcus. I need you to run a deeper background check on one of my personnel, Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, currently assigned to admin duties." "What's the concern, sir?" "Call it curiosity. Something doesn't add up about her assignment history. Can you check classified databases?" There was a pause. "I'll need to use special access channels for anything beyond standard records. That could take a few hours." "Do it. I'll be in my office." Collins hung up and turned his attention to other morning briefings, but part of his mind kept returning to the image of Elena Rodriguez, expertly handling that .338 Lapua Magnum. In 30 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now they were telling him that Elena Rodriguez was not what she appeared to be. 3 hours later, Colonel Martinez knocked on his door. She entered carrying a red folder marked with classification stamps that Collins recognized as indicating special access program material, information compartmentalized at levels above top secret. "Sir," Martinez said, closing the door behind her and activating the electronic privacy privacy shield that would prevent any electronic surveillance. You might want to sit down for this. Collins gestured to the chair across from his desk. That classified? Beyond classified, sir. Sergeant Rodriguez's actual service record is extraordinary. Martinez opened the red folder and placed a photograph on the desk. It showed Elena Rodriguez, but not as Collins had seen her that morning. In the photo, she wore desert camouflage with no visible unit patches, her face painted with camouflage paint, holding a precision rifle in a prone shooting position. Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, Martinez began, is not actually assigned to personnel records management. That's her cover assignment. Her real designation is Special Operations Forces, attached to a unit that doesn't officially exist. She placed another document on the desk. She's a precision marksman with the Army's most classified Special Operations Unit. 89 confirmed kills across multiple theaters of operation, with a maximum engagement range of 3,247 meters. Perfect mission success rate over 4 years of continuous operations. Collins studied the documents, his expression growing more serious with each detail. Jesus Christ, what's she doing pushing paperwork at Fort Bragg? Mandatory psychological evaluation and recovery period. She completed 18 months of consecutive deployments in locations that are so classified, I can't even tell you the countries. The psych evaluation indicated she was approaching psychological burnout. The admin assignment is designed to keep her on active duty while she undergoes counseling and recovery. And the morning weapon maintenance? Martinez smiled grimly. Part of her therapy, apparently. The psychiatrists recommended she maintain connection with her professional skills while working through the psychological impact of extended combat operations. The rifle maintenance is essentially meditation for someone with her background. Collins leaned forward, studying Elena's actual service record. Mission after mission, each one marked success in red letters. Target eliminations at ranges that pushed the boundaries of what was humanly possible with rifle technology. Operations in countries that the United States officially had no military presence in. How long has she been in this admin assignment? 6 months, sir. The original plan was for 12 months of psychological evaluation and recovery. And after that, she returns to special operations. Sir, soldiers with her capabilities are extremely rare. The Army has maybe a dozen precision marksmen who can operate at her level. She's too valuable to waste. Collins closed the folder, his mind processing the implications. Elena Rodriguez wasn't just an exceptional soldier, she was a strategic asset. Her morning ritual wasn't the hobby of a bored clerk. It was an elite operator maintaining the skills that made her one of the military's most lethal weapons. But something else was bothering him. Sarah, why wasn't I briefed about having a special operations asset assigned to my base? Because officially she's not here for special operations. She's here for recovery. Her real identity is need to know only. And now I know. Yes, sir. Which means, Martinez paused as her secure phone buzzed. She glanced at the display and her expression changed. Sir, that's priority traffic from SOCOM headquarters. She answered the phone with her operational call sign, listened for 30 seconds, then hung up. When she looked at Collins, her expression was grim. Sir, we have a problem. There's an urgent mission request that's just come down from the highest levels. High-value target, extreme range elimination required, hostile territory. They're asking for precision marksman capabilities that match exactly what Sergeant Rodriguez can provide. Collins felt the pieces clicking together. They want to send her back out. The mission parameters are challenging. Maximum engagement range estimated at over 3,000 meters. Urban environment, civilian population considerations. They need someone who can make an impossible shot in impossible circumstances. And Elena Rodriguez specializes in impossible. Yes, sir. But there's a complication. Officially, she's still undergoing psychological evaluation. The psychiatrists haven't cleared her for operational duty. Collins stood and walked to his window, looking out over the base where hundreds of soldiers were going about their daily routines, unaware that one of the military's most lethal assets was among them, hiding in plain sight. What's the timeline on this mission? 48 hours for deployment if the operation is approved. Collins turned back to Martinez. I want to see Elena Rodriguez's complete psychological evaluation, and I want to speak with her directly. Sir, that might compromise her cover assignment. Colonel, if we're going to send one of our people into harm's way, I need to know exactly what condition she's in. Elena Rodriguez may be the only soldier capable of completing this mission, but I won't sign off on sending someone who isn't ready. Martinez nodded. I'll arrange for her to be brought to your office under the pretense of routine personnel review. As Martinez left to make the arrangements, Collins remained at his window, thinking about the young woman he had encountered that morning. Elena Rodriguez had appeared to be just another soldier performing routine duties, but now he understood the truth. She was a weapon in human form, temporarily set aside, but ready to be called back into service when the mission demanded the impossible. The question that would soon define both their futures was simple but crucial. Was Elena Rodriguez ready to return to the shadows where American lives hung in the balance, and where failure meant more than just a missed target? Within the hour, that question would be put to the ultimate test. At 1400 hours, Elena Rodriguez received an unusual summons. A staff sergeant from the command group appeared at her desk in Building 7, with instructions to report to General Collins' office for what was described as a routine personnel review. Elena knew immediately that nothing about this was routine. As she walked across the base toward the command building, Elena's mind raced through possibilities. Her morning encounter with Collins had been brief but telling. The general had noticed details that most officers would have overlooked, and his questions had been too specific to be casual curiosity. Elena entered the command building and was escorted to Collins' outer office by his aide, a young lieutenant who seemed nervous about whatever was about to transpire. After a brief wait, she was shown into the general's private office. Collins sat behind his desk, but he wasn't alone. A woman in colonel's insignia sat in a chair to his right, and Elena immediately recognized the bearing of an intelligence officer. More concerning was the red folder on Collins's desk, the kind of folder that contained information classified above top secret. Sergeant Rodriguez, please have a seat, Collins said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I believe you know why you're here. Elena settled into the chair, maintaining perfect military posture. No, sir. I was told this was a routine personnel review. Collins opened the red folder and placed Elena's actual service photograph on the desk between them. The image showed her in full combat gear, weapon in hand, face camouflaged for operations that had never officially happened. Let's dispense with the cover story, Sergeant. I know who you really are. Elena's expression didn't change, but Collins caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Sir, I'm not sure what you mean. 89 confirmed kills, Sergeant. Maximum engagement range of 3,247 meters. 4 years of continuous special operations across multiple theaters. Does that sound familiar? Elena was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes studying Collins' face. Finally, she spoke. Sir, if you have access to that information, then you know I can't discuss it. You're right, but circumstances have changed. Collins nodded to Colonel Martinez, who placed another document on the desk. We've received a mission request that requires exactly your capabilities. High-value target elimination at extreme range. Hostile urban environment. Elena glanced at the mission brief, her trained eye immediately absorbing the tactical details. Target location, estimated range, threat assessment, civilian considerations. It was the kind of shot that would challenge even her abilities. Sir, I'm currently assigned to administrative duties. We know about your psychological evaluation, Sergeant. We also know that sometimes the mission doesn't wait for perfect timing. Elena leaned back in her chair slightly, the first break in her rigid military posture. With respect, sir, the psychological evaluation exists for good reasons. 18 months of continuous operations in hostile territory takes a toll. Tell me about that toll, Sergeant. The question hung in the air. Elena had been asked this same question dozens of times by military psychiatrists, and she had given them the answers they wanted to hear. But something in Collins's tone suggested he was asking for a different reason. Sir, when you've spent that long taking lives at extreme distance, it changes how you see the world. Every window becomes a potential firing position. Every crowd becomes a target-rich environment. Every person at distance becomes a potential threat to be evaluated, and if necessary, eliminated. Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. The psychiatrists are concerned that I've lost the ability to distinguish between combat operations and normal life. They want to ensure I can reintegrate with society without viewing every situation through the scope of a precision rifle. Collins leaned forward. And have you lost that ability? I don't know, sir. That's why I'm in counseling. Martinez spoke for the first time. Sergeant, your psychological evaluation shows significant progress over the past 6 months. Your counselor notes that you've maintained professional skills while working through the psychological impact of extended combat operations. But I haven't been cleared for operational duty. No, Collins acknowledged. You haven't. But this mission, he gestured to the brief on his desk. The target is a high-value enemy asset who has been responsible for the deaths of American service members hours. The shot required is at the absolute edge of technological capability, in an environment where civilian casualties are a primary concern. Elena studied the mission parameters more carefully. The target would be 2,950 meters from the optimal firing position, with multiple buildings between the shooter and target. Wind conditions would be challenging, and the window of opportunity would be measured in seconds. Sir, this is a difficult shot even under ideal conditions. The urban environment adds complexity that could compromise the mission. Could you make it? Elena was quiet for 30 seconds, her mind running through calculations of wind, distance, trajectory, and timing. Yes, sir. But the question isn't whether I could make the shot. The question is whether I should. Collins raised an eyebrow. Explain. Sir, I've spent 6 months learning to be Elena Rodriguez the person, instead of Elena Rodriguez the weapon. This morning, when I was maintaining my rifle, it was therapy, a way of staying connected to my skills without being defined by them. But if I take this mission, she paused, looking directly at Collins. If I take this mission, I go back to being a weapon, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that psychological transition. Martinez consulted her notes. Sergeant, your counselor has noted that you've made significant progress in separating your professional identity from your personal identity. That suggests you may be more ready than you think. With respect, ma'am, my counselor has never had to look through a scope at a human being 3,000 meters away and make the decision to end their life. The psychological preparation for that kind of operation goes beyond what happens in therapy sessions. Collins stood and walked to his window, looking out over the base. Sergeant, I'm going to be direct with you. This mission is critical to national security. The target has information that could compromise ongoing operations and cost American lives, but I won't order you to accept this assignment. He turned back to face her. This has to be your choice. If you're not ready, I need you to tell me now, because once you're deployed, there's no room for hesitation or second guessing. Elena stood as well, her military bearing returning completely. Sir, may I ask for 24 hours to consider? You have 12 hours. The operational window requires deployment by 0600 tomorrow if we're going to make this happen. Elena nodded. Understood, sir. As she turned to leave, Collins called after her. Sergeant? Yes, sir. Your morning ritual with that rifle. Is that Elena Rodriguez the person, or Elena Rodriguez the weapon? Elena paused at the door, considering the question. Sir, I've spent 6 months trying to figure out the difference. Maybe this mission will help me understand which one I really am. After Elena left, Collins and Martinez sat in silence for several minutes. What do you think? Collins asked finally. I think she's more ready than she knows, Martinez replied. But she's right to be cautious. Soldiers with her capabilities walk a fine line between being highly effective operators and becoming something that can't function in normal society. Collins nodded. And if she's not ready, if we send her out and she hesitates at the critical moment, then the mission fails, and we lose one of our most valuable assets permanently. As the sun set over Fort Bragg, Elena Rodriguez sat in her quarters, staring at the mission brief she had been given. The target was a man responsible for the deaths of American soldiers, someone whose elimination would save lives and protect ongoing operations. But taking the shot would mean returning to a world where she was defined by her ability to kill at impossible distances, where success was measured in confirmed eliminations rather than personal growth. The choice before her was simple but profound. Remain Elena Rodriguez the person, recovering and rebuilding her identity, or return to being Elena Rodriguez the weapon, one of the military's most lethal assets. By morning, she would have to decide which version of herself the mission and her country needed most. Elena Rodriguez didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat at her small desk in the NCO quarters, studying the mission brief by lamplight and wrestling with a decision that would define not just her immediate future, but her entire identity. The target dossier painted a clear picture. Hassan al-Rashid, a high-level operative responsible for coordinating attacks against American forces across multiple theaters. Intelligence indicated he would be attending a meeting in a heavily secured compound in a location that was still classified, but Elena could read between the lines of the tactical brief. Urban environment, civilian population, minimal friendly forces in the area. It was the kind of mission she had excelled at, the impossible shot that only a handful of people in the world could attempt, let alone succeed at. But as Elena traced the ballistic calculations with her finger, she found herself thinking about more than just windage and elevation adjustments. She thought about her counseling sessions with Dr. Patricia Hawkins, the Army psychologist, who had spent 6 months helping her understand the difference between being a soldier and being a weapon. At 0300 hours, Elena made a decision. She dressed in her utility uniform and made her way through the quiet base to Building 18C. Using her access code, She entered the armory where her morning ritual had begun this entire chain of events. She retrieved her .338 Lapua Magnum and began the familiar process of disassembly. But this time her actions had a different purpose. As she cleaned each component, she wasn't just maintaining equipment. She was making peace with who she was and who she needed to become. The bolt slid free with its familiar click, and Elena examined it under the harsh fluorescent lights. This small piece of metal had been the final component in decisions that had ended 89 lives. Each shot had been justified, each target a legitimate threat to American forces or national security. But justification didn't erase the psychological weight of those moments when she had squeezed the trigger and watched a human life end through her scope. Elena reassembled the weapon slowly, methodically. As the final component clicked into place, she felt something shift in her mind. Not a return to being purely a weapon, but an integration of Elena Rodriguez, the person with Elena Rodriguez, the precision marksman. She was both. She had always been both. The counseling had helped her understand that accepting her lethal capabilities didn't mean losing her humanity. It meant taking responsibility for both. At 0530 hours, Elena's phone rang. It was Colonel Martinez. Sergeant Rodriguez, report to General Collins' office immediately. We've received updated intelligence on the mission timeline. On my way, ma'am. Elena secured her rifle and made her way to the command building. The base was beginning to stir with early morning activity, but most soldiers were still unaware that one of their own was about to make a decision that could affect national security operations. She found Collins and Martinez in the general's office, both looking like they had been awake all night. Additional folders were spread across Collins's desk, and Elena could see satellite imagery mixed with intelligence reports. "Sergeant, we've got a problem," Collins said without preamble. "Our target has moved up his timeline. Intelligence indicates the meeting will occur in 18 hours, not 48 as originally planned." Elena studied the updated intelligence. "Sir, that changes the deployment parameters significantly. It gets worse. We've lost our primary insertion method. The only way to get a precision marksman into position is a high-altitude, low-opening parachute jump into hostile territory, followed by a 12-kilometer movement to the firing position." Elena felt her pulse quicken slightly. Halo jumps were routine for special operations, but the combination of precision insertion, extended movement, and an extreme-range shot created a mission profile that would challenge even her considerable skills. "What's the extraction plan, sir?" "There isn't one," Martinez said quietly. "This is a one-way trip until the situation stabilizes enough for helicopter extraction, which could be days or weeks." Elena absorbed this information. A solo mission, no immediate extraction, in hostile territory where compromise would mean capture or death. It was the kind of operation that special operations soldiers trained for, but hoped never to face. "Sergeant," Collins said, "I need your decision now. Are you ready for this?" Elena looked at both officers, then at the mission brief spread across Collins's desk. Everything she had learned in 6 months of counseling crystallized into a single moment of clarity. "Sir, Dr. Hawkins has been helping me understand that I'm not just a weapon or just a person. I'm a soldier. And sometimes being a soldier means accepting missions that push the boundaries of what seems possible." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I've spent 6 months learning to live with what I've done in service of my country. This mission is an opportunity to use those same capabilities to prevent future American casualties." Collins leaned forward. "That sounds like a yes, Sergeant." "Yes, sir. I'll take the mission." Martinez immediately began pulling together deployment folders. "Sergeant, you'll need to be at the airfield in 3 hours for mission briefing and equipment check. Transport leaves at 1400 hours. "I'll be ready, ma'am." As Elena prepared to leave, Collins stopped her. "Sergeant, one final question. Your morning ritual with that rifle, will you be doing that before deployment?" Elena smiled slightly, the first genuinely relaxed expression Collins had seen from her. "No, sir, I won't need to. I understand now that the ritual was never about maintaining my skills. It was about maintaining my connection to who I am, and I know who I am." "And who is that?" "I'm Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, United States Army. I'm a precision marksman, a soldier, and a person who has learned to carry the weight of necessary decisions. This morning, that's exactly who the mission needs." Collins nodded. "Good hunting, Sergeant." As Elena left the command building, she felt a sense of completeness she hadn't experienced in months. The psychological evaluation period was over, not because a doctor had signed a form, but because she had made peace with the integration of all aspects of her identity. She thought about Dr. Hawkins, and the hours they had spent discussing the psychological impact of taking lives at extreme distances. The counselor had been right. The key wasn't to separate her professional capabilities from her personal identity, but to accept both as part of who she was as a complete person. Elena Rodriguez was going back to war, but she was going as a whole person who understood the cost of her actions and accepted responsibility for them. The young woman who had struggled to separate her identity from her weapons was gone, replaced by a mature soldier who could carry both the rifle and the weight of its consequences. In 18 hours, she would be in position to take a shot that could save American lives and protect national security operations. It would be shot number 90. If successful, but more importantly, it would be proof that Elena Rodriguez had successfully navigated the most difficult terrain of all, the landscape of her own mind and identity. The mission was about to begin, and Elena Rodriguez, all of Elena Rodriguez, was ready. 36 hours later, Elena Rodriguez lay motionless in a carefully constructed hide site, 2,173 meters from her target. The abandoned apartment building she had selected overlooked a compound where Hassan al-Rashid would appear for exactly 90 seconds during a scheduled meeting with local operatives. The journey to this moment had tested every aspect of her training. The halo jump had been executed flawlessly, but the 12-kilometer movement through hostile territory had required her to avoid 3 separate patrol routes and wait out a 4-hour search when local forces had detected signs of foreign presence in the area. Now, as dawn approached over the unnamed city, Elena was in position with her 338 Lapua Magnum configured exactly as it had been during her morning rituals at Fort Bragg. But this was no longer therapy or routine maintenance. This was the culmination of years of training and months of psychological recovery. Elena checked her watch. 0547 hours local time. Intelligence indicated al-Rashid would appear at 0630 hours for the meeting, giving her 43 minutes to finalize her preparations and account for changing environmental conditions. Through her scope, Elena surveyed the target building. 3rd floor, corner office, large windows that would provide clear fields of fire. The distance was at the absolute edge of her rifle's effective range, but well within her demonstrated capabilities. Wind conditions were acceptable, steady at 8 knots from the northwest, which would require a 2.3 mil adjustment to her scope. But as Elena ran through her final checks, her mind wandered to Dr. Hawkins and their last session before deployment. "Elena," the psychologist had said, "you've made tremendous progress in integrating your professional capabilities with your personal identity, but I want you to understand something important. Taking this mission doesn't erase the work we've done together." "I know, Doc. I'm not going back to being just a weapon." "That's right. You're going as a complete person who happens to be exceptionally skilled at a very specific job. Remember that distinction when the moment comes to take the shot." Elena adjusted her position slightly, ensuring optimal bone support for the extended shooting position she would need to maintain. At 2,973 meters, even the smallest body movement could throw her point of impact off by several feet. At 0615 hours, Elena observed increased activity around the target building. Vehicles arrived carrying what appeared to be local militia leaders, all entering through the main entrance under heavy security. Al-Rashid would be the last to arrive, as was his documented pattern. Elena controlled her breathing, slowing her heart rate and entering the mental state that had made her one of the military's most effective precision marksmen. But unlike her previous 89 confirmed kills, this time she was fully aware of what she was doing and why. Hassan al-Rashid was responsible for the deaths of American soldiers. His elimination would disrupt operations that had cost military lives and would save future casualties. Elena understood both the tactical necessity of the shot and its moral implications. At 0628 hours, a black sedan approached the target building under escort. Elena watched through her scope as security personnel established a perimeter and checked the surroundings. Through the vehicle's rear window, she could see a figure matching al-Rashid's physical description. Elena chambered around and settled into her final firing position. Heart rate, 62 beats per minute. Breathing, controlled and steady. Environmental conditions, stable. Distance to target, 2,273 meters. Wind, steady at 8 knots from the northwest. The sedan stopped directly in front of the target building. Elena watched as security personnel opened the rear door, and Hassan al-Rashid stepped out. He was exactly as described in the intelligence briefings. Tall, bearded, wearing traditional local dress but moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. Al-Rashid paused outside the vehicle, speaking to one of his security personnel while scanning the surrounding area. In 30 seconds, He would enter the building and move to the third-floor meeting room, where Elena would have a clear shot through the large windows. Elena tracked the target through her scope as Al-Rashid moved toward the building entrance. Her crosshairs remained steady on center mass, following his movement with the fluid precision that had been drilled into her through thousands of hours of training. Al-Rashid disappeared into the building. Elena shifted her point of aim to the third-floor window, where he would appear in approximately 60 seconds. She made final adjustments to her scope, accounting for the slight change in angle and elevation to the new target location. Her breathing settled into the rhythm she had practiced since her first day of sniper school. Breathe in, breathe out, hold, fire on the natural pause between heartbeats. But as she prepared for the shot that would mark her return to active operations, Elena found herself thinking not about ballistics or environmental conditions, but about the integration of all aspects of her identity that Dr. Hawkins had helped her achieve. She was Elena Rodriguez, the person, making a conscious decision to eliminate a threat to American lives. She was Elena Rodriguez, the soldier, executing a mission critical to national security. And she was Elena Rodriguez, the precision marksman, about to attempt a shot at the absolute edge of human capability. All three versions of herself were aligned in this moment, working together rather than fighting for dominance. At 06:30 hours exactly, Hassan al-Rashid appeared in the third-floor window. He stood with his back to the glass, speaking to other figures in the room. Elena could see him clearly through her scope, a clear target at 2,973 meters, with optimal shooting conditions. Elena's finger moved to the trigger, taking up the first stage of pressure. Her crosshairs settled on Al-Rashid's center mass, accounting for wind drift and bullet drop over the extreme distance. Heart rate, 58 beats per minute. Breathing, controlled. Environmental conditions, stable. But instead of immediately taking the shot, Elena paused, not from hesitation or uncertainty, but from a complete awareness of what this moment represented. This wasn't just shot number 90. It was proof that she had successfully integrated all aspects of her identity into a complete, functional whole. Al-Rashid turned toward the window, and Elena could see his face clearly for the first time. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with intelligent eyes that showed no awareness of the scope trained on him from nearly 3 kilometers away. Elena thought about the American soldiers who had died because of this man's operations. She thought about the missions that would be compromised if he continued his activities. She thought about the responsibility she carried as one of the few people in the world capable of making this shot under these conditions. And she thought about Dr. Hawkins' final words before deployment. "You're not a weapon, Elena. You're a soldier who happens to be very good with weapons. Remember the difference." Elena exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The .338 Lapua Magnum fired with its characteristic sharp crack, the recoil absorbed by Elena's precisely positioned body. She maintained her sight picture through the scope, tracking the bullet's path across the 2,973 meters to target. Time seemed suspended as the projectile crossed the distance at 2,150 feet per second, accounting for gravity, wind drift, and the countless variables that affected extreme-range precision shooting. Elena's calculations had been perfect, her environmental reading exact, her trigger control flawless. Through her scope, Elena watched Hassan al-Rashid suddenly step back from the window and collapse. The other figures in the room immediately dropped to the floor or moved away from the glass. Within seconds, security personnel would be securing the building and searching for the source of the shot. Elena had perhaps 3 minutes before organized search teams would begin working outward from the target location. She quickly disassembled her rifle, packing it into the specialized carrying case designed for rapid movement. Her extraction route was planned and rehearsed, 12 kilometers to the pickup point where a helicopter would be waiting. But as Elena prepared to leave her firing position, she paused for a moment of reflection. Shot number 90 had been successful, but more importantly, it had been taken by Elena Rodriguez, the complete person, not Elena Rodriguez, the weapon. She had maintained her humanity while executing her professional responsibilities. The months of counseling and psychological recovery had not been preparation to stop being a precision marksman. They had been preparation to be a better one, operating from a position of psychological strength rather than detached lethality. Elena shouldered her equipment and began moving toward the extraction point. Behind her, the city was beginning to wake up to the news that Hassan al-Rashid, one of the region's most dangerous terrorist coordinators, had been eliminated in what would be reported as an impossible shot from an impossible distance by an invisible sniper. The mission was complete, but Elena Rodriguez's journey was just beginning. She would return to Fort Bragg as a changed person, not someone who had abandoned her lethal capabilities, but someone who had learned to carry them as part of a complete, integrated identity. As she moved through the hostile territory toward extraction, Elena found herself looking forward to her next session with Dr. Hawkins. There would be new challenges to discuss, new aspects of identity to explore, and new ways to balance the requirements of being an elite soldier with the needs of being a complete human being. But for now, Elena Rodriguez was exactly what the mission had needed: a precision marksman operating at the peak of human capability, guided by clear moral principles and supported by a complete understanding of her own identity and purpose. Mission accomplished. Shot number 90, confirmed. Elena Rodriguez was going home. Thank you for joining us for Elena's complete story, Silent Humans. If you enjoyed this incredible journey of identity, duty, and precision, please subscribe to Silent Human Greeting and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of our future stories about the heroes who serve in the shadows. 3 weeks later, Elena Rodriguez sat once again in Dr. Patricia Hawkins' office at Fort Bragg, but this time, the dynamic was completely different. She was no longer a soldier struggling to integrate conflicting aspects of her identity. She was a complete person who had successfully balanced her professional capabilities with her personal humanity. How do you feel about the mission? Dr. Hawkins asked, her pen poised over Elena's evaluation file. Successful, Doc. But more than that, it was proof that I can be both an effective soldier and a complete person. The shot was necessary, justified, and executed with full awareness of its implications. Dr. Hawkins made notes in Elena's file. And your morning ritual with the rifle? Elena smiled. I still do it, but it's different now. It's not therapy anymore. It's professional maintenance by someone who understands both the capabilities and the responsibilities that come with those skills. So, you're ready to return to active operations? I am, but I'm also ready to continue growing as a person. The two aren't mutually exclusive anymore. Dr. Hawkins closed Elena's file and stamped it with her final evaluation. Cleared for unlimited duty. Psychological evaluation complete. Later that afternoon, Elena received new orders. She would be returning to special operations, but with a new assignment that reflected both her combat capabilities and her psychological maturity, training the next generation of precision marksmen, helping them develop not just the technical skills for extreme range elimination, but the psychological framework to carry those capabilities as complete human beings. As Elena read her new assignment orders, she realized that her journey from weapon to person to integrated soldier had prepared her for something even more important than taking impossible shots at impossible distances. She was ready to help other soldiers navigate the same psychological terrain she had successfully crossed. That evening, Elena performed her morning ritual one final time in the armory at Fort Bragg. As she disassembled and cleaned her 338 Lapua Magnum, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a young soldier whose identity was defined entirely by her lethal capabilities, through months of psychological recovery and integration, to a mature operator who could carry both the rifle and the weight of its consequences. Elena Rodriguez had learned the most important lesson of all. Being good at killing didn't mean losing her humanity. It meant taking responsibility for both her capabilities and her choices, and using both in service of values larger than herself. As she reassembled her rifle for the last time at Fort Bragg, Elena smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students to train, and new opportunities to prove that the most dangerous soldiers weren't those who felt nothing when they pulled the trigger. They were those who felt everything and chose to pull it anyway, guided by clear moral principles and complete self-awareness. Elena Rodriguez had found her way home, not to a place, but to a complete understanding of who she was and what she was capable of becoming. The story of the soldier with 89 confirmed kills was ending, but the story of Elena Rodriguez, the complete person, was just beginning. The end.